Welcome back to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I'm your host, Renita Ray Davis, and today I'm sitting down with someone whose path has been rooted in advocacy for young people and families since she was a teenager. Today's guest, Renee Ingram, a Montgomery native and an LICSW, began her calling working with at risk youth long before she officially entered the profession. She has served children and families across multiple settings, and what stands out most is her commitment to being a change agent for those navigating trauma and instability. Renee, you've grown personally and professionally since you were last on the podcast. How do you describe yourself in this chapter?
I think the biggest word that comes to mind is just transformative. Like I think a lot of the things that have been happening in my life is almost like I'm just transforming into something new. And of course, when you're going into newness, there's a lot of things that you learn about yourself and you learn about who you serve, and you try to find a way to make those things kind of blend. And I think the deeper I've gotten into my profession and feeling less like a baby social worker, I think that is kind of strengthened. Like, okay, I have my flow. I know how to put my personality in this thing. And that in itself feels like transforming.
I've been talking to my clients. I use a different language because, I'm a little woo woo.
Not woo
But
woo.
I feel like this year, and I'm gonna just kind of put it a little bit out there. It's been the year of the wooden snake, the Chinese year of the wooden snake, and a lot of the podcasts that I enjoy listening to have been talking about how we've had to shed the old skin because we are moving into our these new versions of ourselves, right? And so this 2025, which is also this 9 year, which is a year of completion, because next year we go into a 0 year, or 10 or 0 year, is this also this completing of the former self and the ways that we once were, including the fact, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you shed the title LMSW and moved into the title of licensed independent clinical social worker. And so you just there, I know even personally, there's been a lot of shedding you had to do in order to move into this new space. And so I've been calling it with my clients. A lot of literally the way we started out in January and the way we're ending in 2025 in December, we are different, completely different people.
Mhm.
And I've been calling it a timeline shift.
Yeah. Oh, I like
Yes.
that.
I
I like
was like,
that.
oh, we've had a timeline shift. And so, using that energy a little bit, and the question that I was going to ask you, it's almost like we've jumped into a new portal. In the old place we were, we knew where the vending machines were. We knew where the coffee pot was. We knew, where everything was. And now you've moved into this new level and version of yourself. What has surprised you the most?
Oh my goodness. Well, first, let me say, like, when you bring up like the shifting, there was something you said. I don't know what supervision session I was in, but you said something about there is going to be a shift. And you said that this is going to be, I don't know if you said it's like going to be like a peak of like our confidence or something. And I wrote that down on a sticky note somewhere, and that's just been sticking in my brain while we were talking. I was like, this sounds so familiar. So, absolutely. But, I just forgot your question because I just thought about the sticky note.
No, I love it. I'm like, what's on a sticky note? I love sticky notes. I no, I love that, Renee. And the thing in that energy is like, people think when we're shifting, when we're changing, and I wanted to even ask you a question about your clients, and so maybe I'll bring it in here. When we're shifting and we're transitioning into these new versions of ourselves, a lot of people think it's like this lightning strike. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, oh, I'm a new version. But really,
Yeah,
what ends up happening is this incremental, step by
yeah.
step. I made this choice, or I made that choice that was in alignment with who I am, or something. I made a choice that brings me more joy instead of brings me back to fear and scarcity. And you keep
Mhm.
choosing you. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm in a new version of myself.
It's almost unrecognizable. Like you're learning yourself for like the first time because you're evolving over time. And I've told my clients this a bunch of times. I don't listen to myself, obviously, but but when I tell my clients this, I'm like, when you have experienced trauma, that is a new version of yourself. You can't go back to who you were before. So you kind of have to learn to adapt with your experience that you had trauma wise and evolve into a new person. It doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck in that trauma space forever, but you're going to take some things from that trauma and it's going to shape who you are in the future in more positive ways. So I think like when you're speaking to that, like we do have to talk to our clients a lot about that transformation because when they come to us, they're coming with a lot of things they need to unpack. There's some brokenness, there's some childhood trauma, there's some things they haven't addressed. But we kind of have to remind them it's like, we can't take you back. We can only take you forward. So I think that's something that I've had to learn professionally and personally because I think even personally, I was keeping myself stuck in this expectation of, okay, am I still the same Renee? I want to be who I was before this happened or that happened. And in reality, I can't go back to that person. She doesn't exist. Um, and side note, I know I keep doing all these side notes, but there was a beautiful interview that I saw with Erica Badu, and she talked about it is almost like a grieving process that you have to do for yourself. A part of you dies when you start letting things go. And she talked about it like a death. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect way to put it. Because we think about mourning as just losing a physical person, but mourning can also be is I'm stepping into something new and I'm having to mourn that broken version of myself that's no longer here.
I was trying to find something I literally put on my story this morning. And if you don't follow me, you can follow me on Illuminated Expressions on Instagram. But I literally put this on my story this morning. It's like, stop trying to save the old version of yourself. That part of you is dead.
Yeah.
It's almost like, and maybe even, I know that this your podcast won't publish until January, but as we're talking
Mhm.
about the end of the year, December 2025, it's almost like go ahead and write the obituary. Talk about all the things that
Mhm.
she accomplished. Talk about all the
Mhm.
things that maybe she even regrets, but has another opportunity, if it's still in alignment, to do
Yep.
again if she so chooses to. But stop trying to save that version of yourself because
Mhm.
that version of you is no longer here. She's exactly what you said, and again, I love that Mama Auntie whatever Badu
Yes.
said the same thing because I literally posted that on my stories this morning, and we don't honor that enough. We're just like, okay,
Mhm.
especially because I work with a bunch of top tier social workers, and a lot of people are always on to the next thing,
Mhm.
right? Versus like, oh, even with you, Renee, again, getting back to the fact that you are at LICSW this year since the last time we
Yes.
talked, it's almost like, oh, I was in this version. Did I stop and honor all that she accomplished and pushed through in order for me to get to this version?
Yeah.
I talk to you guys a lot about doing vision boards, but I say
Mhm.
let's do ego boards too. Like do your
Mhm.
ego board so that you can see all the things that you accomplished versus worrying about or focusing on getting to that next accomplishment. And so, because that version of you will no longer exist, so stop and
Yeah.
honor her before you move on to the next. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that, I challenged myself with for December that I'm kind of feeling it right now
Hmm.
is journaling. I haven't really started, but I did write something in my journal and it kind of goes to what you're speaking to. And it's my let go list for 2025. And so my goal is to have that done by the end of 2025 and write down all the things that I want to let go and leave in this year. And I think that's really helpful for me because I have a very analytical mind. I don't know if it's an anxiety brain. I like to call it analytical, but I hold on to a lot of things. I process things over and over, and I'm like, did I do this right? Oh, I messed up here. And then I beat myself up a lot. And so I have all of these thoughts that come back, and I don't give myself a lot of grace. And I want that list to be me giving myself grace. Like, let these things go that went wrong. Like, if you did something wrong or something just didn't work out, like, let those things go. And then I want to make another list. I want to really list those things like that I'm looking forward to. And I don't know who told me this, but like, I always have like these random thoughts. But I think someone a long time ago told me it's like, write things down like it's something that's going to happen. So instead of like, oh, I wish that this would happen, or, I'm looking forward to this happening. And so that is going to be my list for the start of the new year.
We got our homework. I love it. Yes. And you know what I call it? So I'm going to be stealing it and having some of my clients do that work as well. But one of the things I call it with my clients is scripting. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead as if it has happened 6 months later and talk about how grateful you are to have had that experience. And so I love that. And so Renee, I was thinking, here we are, your LICSW, because I don't want to get us too
Mhm.
far away. Because oh my goodness, I was about to go to a whole.
Yes,
We were about to
and we
have
can
church.
go.
Yes. But there's a specific reason you came here, and I want to make sure that I give a space to do that. But before we get there, I
Okay.
do want to celebrate. I want to sit, just like I'm telling you, grieving and
Mhm.
honoring the previous versions of ourselves, but then having a moment as you walked into this new portal and sitting and celebrating this new level that you're on, right? And so,
Mhm.
you're LICSW now. And I told you you were going to be a young one too, right? And so here you are
Yes.
with these letters behind your name. And how did you stop and celebrate yourself? And or what has surprised you the most about getting those letters behind your name?
um I think, well, I'll start with what surprised me. I think what surprised me about getting those letters was the journey. I think a lot of times we set a goal for ourselves and we want it to happen like this. And my goal was like, okay, as soon as I finish supervision, I'm taking the test right after. And life did not work that way. Life was happening, my personal life was life and I had to really like take care of myself before I could focus on getting more letters behind my name. Because that test is going to be there. My hours are already completed. That's not going to change. So I kind of had to remind myself, like, take your time with this thing. So I do think that that was something I definitely learned during that journey. And also, again, giving myself grace, because a lot of the things that I think we do, like when we hear about these big tests or these big things, we kind of treat it like, oh my gosh, this is do or die. I'm not going to be a social worker if I don't do this. And then it's like, it's a test. Like, you're still a social worker, you know? And I had to remind myself of that. It's like, you know your stuff. You just need to be able to answer these questions. You're doing the work, but you're just trying to pass a test. Like, I know the test is important, but give yourself a little grace in that. And so I had to really work on that because I had such bad test anxiety, like so bad that I was almost like shutting down every time I sat down to study. And so I had to really like unpack some of those worries and those thoughts. And I think that did lead to my success in the test because I shed a lot of that and I focused in on what do I not know versus what I already know. And I think that did really help me on test day. And then I wrote my prayers, I wrote my letters down, and I took a deep breath and we took it and we passed. So I will say the biggest thing that has changed for me as far as getting my letters is um, being able to celebrate myself more. And I think that definitely came from you because I remember telling you, and I was just thinking about what's next, what's next, what's next. I'm rushing myself to do all these big things. And I remember you telling me, like, slow down. Like, why did you get these letters? Um, and I think that really helped me because then I'm like, girl, you're trying to think about this new job and this and this and this and this. And what I decided to do a couple weeks after I passed my test, I went to Atlanta and I told all my friends, I'm like, hey, I got my licensure. Let's just celebrate each other and like just go out and have a good time. That was so needed. Like, I just needed a minute to celebrate a win and just, be happy for myself versus trying to rush my journey along.
Renee, that is so beautiful. I saw thinking about a post I saw on Instagram recently. Um, I saw these girls celebrating themselves. And they each had a cake and were saying, I passed my RN license or I survived the year. And so the fact that you took your girlfriends and you guys all celebrate each other, I'm just like, yes, I
Yeah.
love that, especially when Black women do that, like
Thank you.
celebrating each other. But can I go back to something you said? This is the second time you said it. You had such test anxiety. And then even when you're talking about your list, which I love your list, and I promise you I'm taking that idea. I'll give you credit, but I'll take it. um you
That's it.
you shifted, you shedded the word anxiety. I love this. It's so social work, and I've been
Mhm.
doing this a lot with my clients as well, and even with myself. And I'll tell you, so you changed your word from anxiety to analytical. I changed the word anxiety for myself. This has just happened this year for me too. I changed the word from anxiety to activated. Oh, because I had these events that were
Mhm.
happening, and I was going to, and all this, and I thought I was feeling so anxious, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
Renita, you're just activated. You're activated because you're having new experiences and doing things you've never done before, and so
Mhm.
I love that you reframed the word anxiety to have this acceptance about yourself, that I have an analytical brain. That's what got me through my master's program. That's what got me through the clinical exam on the first try. I have an analytical brain instead of shaming yourself for having these thoughts that are just kind of running through you, using it as a superpower instead. I really think if we could use the things that society have deemed negative and reframe it and then use it as our superpower, oh my goodness, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think as a society now we try to put labels on everything. Like everything has to have a description or a word or like something on it. And like sometimes you just have to just be. Like you don't have to be this label or this thing. Like just be. And I think that's what I've been learning the most about myself is that growing up, I allowed people to put labels on me. And then I also added some of my own. And then I just accepted all of those negative labels as facts when they're not true. And so I really had to do a lot of shedding, for lack of a better word, since we're talking about shedding this year, and really figure out are these words or labels coming from me or are they coming from other people? And if they are coming from other people, why am I accepting them? And really claiming my power back and like, okay, how would I define myself? Or how do I want to define myself differently than I have before? I think that has helped me a whole lot with just working on like my positive thinking and reframing because a lot of times when people say things, it's easy to take that on like maybe I am a bad person or maybe, I am doing this wrong or maybe I'm not the best social worker, And so you take these things on and then you have to be like, wait a minute, like I'm great at what I do?
You are amazing at what you do. You are amazing at what you do, especially with those babies, because not all of us can work with kids, and you have such a passion and a heart for children. And so
Yes.
I always am, because I'm not one who can work with with
I
kids.
remember that.
Yeah. So I'm always giving homage to those of you who can, because that's a special population. Before we move on to why, I wanted to have you back on, and you kind of are already starting to hit on a little bit. I want to speak to something that you said in regards to your clinical licensure journey. You thought you were going to I thought you were gonna just like get out of supervision, take the exam, go ahead and get these letters. But I was remembering one of the first times you came onto the podcast and you shared your story, your how you got into social work when you were still at Clark Atlanta, and that journey wasn't linear at all. It wasn't a linear journey. But then we forget when we're on to the next thing we're accomplishing that this other thing that I did it wasn't linear, but I'm going to have this new expectation that I'm about to be on this linear journey as well. When none of the things that we've accomplished big or that have great meaning to us ever took a B C D E journey, they've always had these obstacles or things we've had to overcome or be stretched in. But we easily forget that when we're on to the next thing.
Yeah, so definitely. I think it's easy for us to fall off track and we're trying to like keep moving. um but and I will say like as far as like things not being linear, I think my expectations for myself, I think that's what kind of gets in the way sometimes. Because I'm like, okay, well, after I accomplish this thing, then it should be linear, you know? So, I can admit that. Like when I got my my LCSW, I'm like, this is gonna be smooth sailing. Like I'm gonna have all the money, I'm gonna be doing all the things, and life is like, girl, no. So, and that's fine, and that's fine, and I think it's okay to still want better for yourself, but to also like accept where you are. And I know that's something that me and you have talked about a lot. It's like, what are some positives you can find from where you're at, and what influence are you making where you are? And I will say right now, I'm still doing what I love. It's just not, what I'm expecting. So I'm still working with children. That's something that I've always been passionate about, like you said, since I was younger. And I started off doing babysitting jobs, like, and I'm just like, I love doing this. I started doing tutoring. I started doing after school. So I kept putting myself in child centered places. I was never one to be like, I'm gonna go work fast food or I'm gonna go work retail. I'm like, I'm gonna place myself with a baby. So I'm thinking about my career. And so I kept doing it, and then it turned into me being a children's therapist, and now I'm doing more case management work with the children that I serve in a school setting. And I love it because the babies are just like flocking to me now. I catch all the babies that are having tantrums in the hallway to the point now where teachers are like, can you walk him to this other room? And I'm like, okay. So, but I love that because what that tells me is these kids gravitate to you, and it's not because, you're just Renee or you're just Miss Ingram or whatever. It's because they feel that you care, like they feel this nurturing energy. And I think kids are the best tellers of energy, like hands down. So I noticed this pattern at the school that I'm at, like all the kids that are having tantrums and breakdowns, when I come in the mix, I'm like, hey, you want to go for a walk? They're like, yeah. Like, and I'm some stranger they've never met. And then I'm like, take some deep breaths. You want to come blow bubbles with me? You want to come do this? And they're like, yeah. And I think that's about energy. Like, yes, I'm having a hard day at school. Me and my teacher are butting heads right now, but this lady wants me to come hang out. I'm going to hang out. So I just love that about me, that I'm able to do that and just jump in. Because one, like I said, it goes back to that energy, but also two, it's about connections and relationships. And when kids trust you and you develop that rapport, when you start adding services in the mix of that, it makes it so much easier because you and that kid are established. Then you can build trust with the parents, and then you're brokering all these supports for that student. So I love that. I love that those connections are happening early on. And I just love that about our field is that we are not just sitting in one place. We're in the communities, we're like in the HR departments, like we're in government, like we're everywhere. And I just love that. It's so broad, it's so flexible, and there's so many connections you can make. And one thing I will say before we move on is I think that this position that I'm in right now is pushing me to be out in the community more and make those connections. I think it is stretching me. I'm not gonna lie, because in my mind I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do I tell a councilman that I want to talk? You know what I mean? So it's stretching me. I'm not gonna lie, but I sucked that up a little bit and I made a list of people that I can contact, and I'm gonna do that this week.
I'm so proud of you. And I do remember in supervision, I was like, Renee, you're going to be out in the community. Because I remember you were doing those
Mhm.
presentations. And so I love, but you know what I just heard from you? Two things that this season for you is doing. One, those kids don't know anything about LICSW. They just know, like you
Mhm.
said, energy. They just know that it feels good, it feels safe, it feels secure to be in your presence. And so you are getting grounded in with or without letters. This is innately my gift. I'm able
Yeah.
to do this in the world and make this kind of beautiful impact with or without letters. And I think getting
Mhm.
grounded in your innate gift, especially so early on in your career, is so
Mhm.
beautiful, because one of the things, I say this all the time, is like, what is your innate gift? Bring that into the social
Mhm.
work profession. So there's this, you don't even have to think about burnout, because you're doing the thing you are innately built for within the profession you're getting paid to do. So that you getting grounded in your innate gift, that you are like sunlight to these
Mhm.
babies without, and they don't know anything about LICSW, right?
Absolutely.
And so then
Yeah.
the second I love that you said is you're getting stretched, because we were talking in supervision recently. You can have your dream job, but just because it's a dream job doesn't mean you're not going to get stretched. Doesn't mean there's not going to
Mhm.
be discomfort. Doesn't mean that you're not, because growing means that you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. And so the fact that
Absolutely.
you are getting grounded in what your innate gifts are, and the fact that you are having to be stretched outside of your comfort zone, to me this says, as we are shedding our skin in
Mhm.
this year 9 that we are having in this year of transformation, that means shedding. To me, it's like you're grounded in who you are and you're getting ready to move to your next place. I'm
Yes.
super excited for you, Renee. I'm so super excited for you. I love that. That was so good. And so I'm gonna do this, because one of the things you said is that you gained a credential that signals expertise. Like, oh, I have LICSW, but here I am with the kids. And what I thought it was gonna look like this. But
Mhm.
life, and what you said was, oh, I thought it was gonna be ABC. I thought it was gonna be linear. But life
Mhm.
doesn't suddenly become easy or clear just because you got that license. And so what made this conversation, the reason that we wanted to have you back on, is this myth of perfection and the reality of therapist humanity. And I wanted to get back to that because we had a phone call, and I was like, you got to come and talk to the social workers about that. And
Yeah.
it was almost this, we're supposed to show up like this. Now that I have all this,
Mhm.
I'm supposed to show up. But the reality is what?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I'll speak to like a recent experience when I started this position and I told people in my cohort my credentials, they were like, what are you doing here? And I think, when I finally got to this point of like accepting this is where I am, and I heard that, I'm like, well, dang, what am I doing here? And then that self-doubt started creeping in, like, well, maybe I do need to go do something else. But I had to kind of recenter myself and really remind myself that, this is not by chance. You did not land here by chance. So this is not something that you're just doing frivolously, like, oh, this is just something to do. Like, this is something that you're passionate about doing, you know? And so to speak to that level of perfection, I think that it's kind of crossed personal and like professional lines for me. Because again, my analytical brain, I have a very perfectionist personality. So I kind of have higher standards for myself than people around me. And what happens with that is the level of disappointment when I don't get exactly what I'm looking to get or receive. And I will say, when it comes to me personally, I had to really take inventory of where I was emotionally as a therapist. I think when people hear the word therapist, they feel like you're supposed to know it all, you're put together, you don't have breakdowns, you're just this person I'm just getting all this healing from, and you're just healed. And it's like, no, no, like, I am not completely healed. There's some things that are still attached to me, and there are things that are still attaching to me as we go throughout life. And so it's really hard to be a therapist, because I think people put you in this box of like, okay, well, you should be fine. And I think I had to undo that thinking for myself, because I used to tell myself like, oh, you're fine. Like, you can handle trauma work. You're fine. And then so one day I'm having a breakdown in my car about a client I had earlier that day. So it's like, you're not fine. You're carrying some of that stuff with you, but it's also reminding you of things that you haven't unpacked for yourself. And so undoing some of that like idea of like perfection and you have to have it together, I think a lot of that happened for me this year. To really say, you need to go talk to a therapist and you need to unpack some of the things that you have not healed from in your own childhood while you're trying to heal the babies, you know?
I love that so much. One of my favorite sayings, or one of the things I say a lot, is my favorite therapists are those who have therapists. One, when I
Absolutely.
was teaching social work, I would say, have that experience. Some of the assignments were going to groups, the AA groups, the Al-Anon groups, or having group experience on the other side of the table. But having that experience of what does it feel like to be on the other side of the table. But the other thing that I say all the time is you can only take your client as far as you're willing to go, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you were in when we opened up and you were talking about getting to know the clients that you serve. One of the things I'm going to hopefully get back to is when we're working with our clients and they have this transformation, they're at the next level. And then you're like, ooh, that's touching. Oh, you want to move to the next level? I haven't moved to the next level yet. You know what I mean? Like, so I
Mm-hmm.
have to go and do that work as you're bringing some of this stuff up. It's reminding me of this thing or that thing or the other thing, even if it's not the same exact event, it's the same energy. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
being able to, I love the field of the profession of social work because it is such a personal development. You have to do your own personal development all the time if you're going to continue to work with people. If you don't, then your clients are going to stay stuck where you are. So
Yes.
the fact that you're willing to go and do therapy. But getting back to that original question I had 50 minutes ago, you said you not just learning about yourself, and I love this, but it was learning about the clients. What have you learned about your clients?
I will say that the biggest thing that I've learned about my clients specifically, just in this community, is that there's a lot of barriers. And I know that's very vague because a lot of our clients have barriers, but I will say they have a lot of barriers that have to do with living in poverty. And a lot of it had to do with transportation, having clean clothes to wear. Can I make it to school? Can I make it to my sessions? You know? And so when I was in my previous role, I would get kind of annoyed, like, oh, they missed their session today, you know, because I had this time blocked off and, I have this other time blocked off for notes. So I'm like, I'm, very perfectionist. I'm like, oh my gosh, why aren't you here? But then I think about it. I'm like, if you only had enough gas to get your kid to school and back home, that's what you got, you know? And so I had to shed that idea of like, my clients are not going to be perfect clients. Just because they're seeing me and they're gaining these skills, they're not going to be perfect clients. They're still human beings that are still healing, and they're still other resources that they need outside of just therapy. And so a lot of what I was doing in my old job, I was seeing kids at school to kind of bridge that transportation gap. I was doing telehealth. I was doing anything I can to try to make it work, even if I was having to go call a social worker at the district. I'm like, hey, can I come use your office? So I'm like, I'm trying to make it easier. So if that will make you show up, I'm gonna show up in that space. I even did sessions before school started, like, which is crazy. But I mean, I have to do what I have to do because I see this need and I see these barriers that are fixable in that moment. Like, and so I think that's one of the biggest things I learned about my clients is that even though they're in therapy, they're still working on other things. Um, I've also given myself grace too when my clients relapse into old behaviors and reactions to things. I think when you work with babies, you feel this pressure to perform for the parents because the parents have this expectation of, well, here's my kid, fix them. And you're like, oh, okay. And so they're calling you and they're like, hey, you know, my child is still doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, they are still doing that because I'm seeing them maybe 45 minutes a week, you know? So I think when you think in terms of like when you're a professional and you're working with your client, it's okay to remind the people that you're working with, it's like, hey, you know, this is what I'm providing for X amount of time, but can you also facilitate that change or that behavior? And I've had to like learn to speak up for myself with parents and say, hey, like, you know, this is what I'm practicing with them. Like I show them the coping skills or whatever we're learning about. And I'm like, hey, this is what we're practicing. This is what we're working on. So can you have them teach this to you when you're at home? Because kids love that. They love when they can teach you something. So I'm like, yeah, can you have them teach this to you when you're at home and y'all practice this? Because we know as adults, any behavior that you're trying to implement, you got to practice it. Just like when it comes to going to the gym. If I go to the gym one day and then I don't go for another month, like, am I practicing that behavior? And so when you get in that mode of like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym every day at 5 a.m., you are creating that pattern of behavior. You may not get it right every time. You might not go at 5. You might make it there at 6:30. You might not make it there at all. But eventually you're going to get, your body's going to get used to that pattern. You're going to wake up on time. So it's the same thing when it comes to human behavior. We have to let patterns, you know, give them a minute to like come into place. And so I would say that's one of another big things that, you know, I've been noticing with my clients is like just give them that space to make mistakes and create those healthy patterns that we're trying to create. And also be okay if they don't happen because we all know we've all had clients that we've worked with and we're like, I wish they would have had a different outcome. But there's only so far we can take them.
Can I tell you what I just heard you say, Renee? Is that when you learn to give your clients grace and or vice versa, you learn to also
Mhm.
give yourself grace. And so
Mhm.
the shedding for you this year that happened in 2025 is the shedding of perfectionism. And then it just spread into all areas of your life.
It did. It
Isn't that
did.
beautiful?
It is. The process wasn't beautiful.
Yes, it is. Because, you know, that's what I said. I'm like, find the beauty where you are. You even said that.
Yeah,
I tell you
I
guys that.
did.
Find
I
the
did.
beauty where you are. So even the process was beautiful.
Mhm.
Especially as you move more and more away from it, you're going to be like, yeah, that was actually a fair. Because you just articulated it so beautifully for us. And so I want to kind of lean into it a little bit more because what I heard you say is as therapists, especially, you know, we have this mindset, I'm going to get this MSW, then things are going to go linear. I'm going to get this LMSW, then things are going to go linear. I'm going to get
Mhm.
this LICSW, then things are going to, okay, third time is the charm. Maybe I should just give myself some grace and even kind of take off what other people expect of me, is what I heard you telling other social workers. So I kind of want you to lean into, you say it to your clients, you've learned to say it to yourself. How can we share
Mhm.
this message of grace with other social workers who think that their social work path is this linear path?
That's such a good question.
Mm.
I will say, for social workers, I think I'm gonna steal something from you. It's like really knowing what you're passionate about and let that be your focus.
Mhm.
I think we fall so much into like the numbers of everything. Like I have to make this salary, I have to live in this house, I have to have these high performing clients. Like I have to have all these things moving and moving and moving all the time. But going back to your why centers you so much. And I didn't realize that until this year because I was hearing people around me say slow down, but me being me, I'm like, no, I'm gonna keep going. And when I finally slowed down, I'm like, you need to heal some stuff and you have some things that you have to release. And so, all this to say, as social workers, one, we need to recognize our why. And even if you have to put it on a sticky note, because I do that all the time, I have random sticky note, I have a sticky note like right here. Random sticky notes. If you have to say, like, my why is working with veterans, put that up somewhere and let that be your focus, not the numbers of everything. Remind yourself of your clients. Even if you're like, oh, my clients are getting on my nerves this week, find one thing that you're like, you are able to get a client to see. Even if they had like an like epiphany moment, like, oh, that makes sense, I do that. That's a win, like, because we know as human beings we're stubborn, so people are not always going to see what you're trying to get them to see. So that's a win. They can recognize something, a pattern that they're doing. That's a win. And even if you have to write it down, respecting confidentiality, but write down, hey, I had a client this week that was able to recognize these destructive patterns. Put that somewhere, and that's going to keep you moving and keep you motivated. The second thing I will say to social workers is do a self inventory, because a lot of times we are focused on doing assessments for our clients, and we're trying to help them figure out patterns, but we also have some. And so I think it's important for you to sit with yourself, and I will say that's really uncomfortable, as someone who's done it. It's uncomfortable, it's ugly, it's not always beautiful. There are some beautiful parts of it, but sit with yourself and really look at yourself and try to understand and give yourself that love and support that you give your clients, because one, you have to live with yourself for the rest of your life. So you should give yourself some love. But also two, you want to be able to sustain yourself in this career. Like, if you don't look at yourself, if you don't give yourself that love and support back, you're going to drain it all out into your clients and you're not going to have anything left. And I know, Renita, we've talked about this a lot. It's like a lot of us are leaving this profession, whether it be burnout or this test or whatever it is. Like, people are leaving because they've put so much into it and they want this stuff back. And I just wonder if they, took that time to do that inventory or do that time to say, this is my passion, like what that would have changed as far as their longevity in social work.
I love that. I love both of those, Renee. And I'm going to speak from me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
26 years this year in the profession, and I am still in love with social work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this podcast for me is my love letter to social work, because I'm still in love with the profession and I want other people to fall in love with it as well, because I think it's beautiful. It's hard. It's challenging. There's a lot of
Yes.
shadows, but it's such a beautiful, healing space when you focus on that. But I was, speaking to what you were saying, I think the reason I've been able to do over 2 decades is because I knew early on my MSW internship. The social worker who was over me had a stroke while I was during and she said to me, "Make sure I took care of myself." So, like literally, year one, I got
Mhm.
embedded that it had to be about self care. And so, all the frou stuff, the hair, the nails, but also the
Mhm.
sitting in front of a therapist or an astrologer or a spiritual advisor, whatever you,
Mhm.
financial advisor, whatever
Whatever.
you have to do that helps to shift that anxiety to activation
Mhm.
or analytical or whatever it is. But doing that self care, but also knowing your why. I
Mhm.
mean, for me, and I'm going to put knowing your why and not being afraid to reinvent yourself. For me, the
Mhm.
why for me for a while was the Goddesses of Social Work Supervision Community. I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure women who looked like me had quality supervision at a price that they could afford. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
all right, we're gonna be a whole army of LCSWs out here. We're gonna change the world. And knowing that is your why, but then also knowing your why can change, and don't be afraid to pivot your why. And so then I did that for a while. Then I was like, you know what? I love listening to social work stories, right? And so then we
Mhm.
started the podcast, and now I get to listen to people who became clinical social workers be on this journey, and I get to hear all about it, and we get to share it with other people and keep them inspired and motivated. And so
Mhm.
still though, practicing self-care, but staying rooted in the why of why you're doing this. And I even want to speak to
Absolutely.
the social workers who are struggling to pass that clinical exam. Remember, sit back for a second and why do you even want to take it? Is it even needed for what it is you want to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we get so tunnel visioned on this thing that, oh, this is my next goal. I'm not gonna, but get back to why are you doing this work? What is the work you said you wanted to do? And then take the exam if it's needed in or would enhance or the experience for you. But taking it to without knowing why you're taking it loses it for you. So I just wanted to offer that gift to people. I'm going to ask this last question, Renee, and you kind of gave us a little bit of already, but one of the things that I loved about you and one of the other goddesses, you two have such unique voices. I think that
Mm.
because you have such a unique voice, it's going to be memorable. Like people are going to know your voice, without even seeing your cute face. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's Renee Ingram. I know that voice, right? And it's not just that it's unique, and I don't even want to minimize by saying even cute, but it is
Mhm.
powerful. You have a powerful voice. Yes. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I want to know, because you kind of mentioned it when you said,
Mhm.
I'm having to bow up a little bit and tell the parents,
Mhm.
how about you do this? How about you do that?
Mhm.
But how do you feel like, especially since getting this clinical license, how are you growing into your voice or your authority as a social worker?
Mhm.
Mm.
Now, how am I? Well, I will say this. I think a lot of that power and a lot of that authority, I think one, it does come internally, but I will say having a strong support system. Like one thing that I will say is that I don't know when this generation got so tough and they're like, I got it, I can handle it. I'm not feeling nothing, I'm good. Like I'm not. Like I meet my people. And I even think about that like biblically. Like, I mean, when I think about our Lord and Savior, like he is begging for his father, why have you forsaken me? Like, this is our like he is the pinnacle. So I'm like, if he can beg and ask for help, we can definitely do that. So all this to say, it is okay to ask for help and have people strengthen you and give you power, because sometimes when we fall short, we need that extra support. I think the biggest mistake I ever made in social work is trying to think I had to do everything myself, or I had to have it figured out and not ask questions. Um, and so I'm learning to shed some of that pridefulness, that ego, and be like, okay, this is what I need to get done. How do I do this? Um, I'm looking for supports for my client in this area. Who do you know? And then I'm also thinking in my own brain, like, who do you know? Because you know some people now. So I think that does make you more powerful, and it makes you more confident as a social worker when you're able to ask yourself those bigger questions. Because even if you're not the one providing the service, even brokering services, you're still that's still a superpower. Like you build a team of people and you have people showing up for your client. That's a win for you because your client got what they needed. And so I say me finding my power had a lot to do with my internal voice, but it had a lot to do with who I surround myself with too. I'm so grateful for the goddess of social work because it is like having like my little social work like homegirls now. Like I'm like, hey, I know you work here. Like, can you tell me about this? Or like, hey, like I'm interested in doing this. Do you have any openings? Like it's like a little network of people, and it's like so cool. I've actually like been able to meet some of them in person. So I'm like, that's so cool. And then some of them have little side hustles that I've been seeing too. So I'm like, that's so cool. So I love that space because you never know what people are doing outside of the profession and in it. Um, but again, like that's a superpower. Like people have things that they are into that can help support each other and help support the profession. And that's such a beautiful thing. So making sure that you have your internal voice together, making sure you find your good social work community. And they don't have to all be social workers. I just, I think they're a little better though. I have a lot of social work friends and counselor friends, but I can have other friends too. But I'm just saying we're a little different.
I love that. I love that. So, you know what I was thinking while you're talking about your voice and your community and brokering resources? I was thinking you're now being pushed to talk to councilmen and representatives, and so your level of brokering is upgrading.
Yeah.
And so now your voice is upgrading because you're now having to speak to not just principals or social workers and principals and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, but now you're doing it on the level I always saw you doing it on, which is policy. You know that we've talked. You're doing it
Yes.
on a level, and I want to. I know we're going over just a little bit. I want to say that sometimes I'm a, I wrote something, how you said I wrote it on my sticky note. I wrote something in the back of my 2025 calendar and that I wanted to experience in 2025. And I always do that. We believe in vision boards and vision boxes, sticky notes, having them and seeing them. But I wrote something in my 2025 calendar that did not manifest. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. But then when I really thought about the things that did manifest, that getting to have these really public and broad experiences, if the thing I had written down had manifested, I would not have been able to have those experiences. And so sometimes we're thinking, oh, so as you are writing your things down, you're thinking maybe too small, right? Because the thing that I written down that I wanted to manifest, I was thinking too small because my life became so much bigger in 2025. And so I kind of want to give you guys that, like, as you're writing the thing you're looking forward to down, think big first and foremost. But then if you see you're like, oh, I didn't accomplish that, really, again, this reframe that we're so good at social work doing, this reframe of, if I did manifest this thing, then I would not have had time and or the space or the energy to do these other things that I did get to experience. And so sometimes I think Spirit Universe is saying you're thinking too small. You're thinking too small. And so here you are, Renee. You have this powerful voice and you're using it to speak to the babies and you're using it to speak to their parents. You're using it to speak to these amazing social work communities that I'm so glad you're in and a part of with us. But now Spirit's like, your voice was always meant to speak in big and high places. Don't lose that. But it is always meant to speak in bigger and higher places because you have a huge impact that you're making on the world. Do you receive that?
I do receive that.
I love it.
That's a huge weight, but I want to accept that weight. I think I want to carry that now. I think what's been the best part for me is like going through this transformation process this year. The biggest thing that I will say that I'm so grateful for, like you said, is like those things that I thought I wanted. I'm so glad they didn't happen. Like I think I'm finally getting to that point where I'm like, I'm okay that that didn't happen because look at what I'm being pushed to do now. Like I have to go in the community and talk to businesses and be like, hey, how can you support our students? You know, and before, you know, when I was working at my previous job, those were supports were already in place. So now there's a little stretching going on. So I don't know if that means that I'm going to be doing some solo things later in the future. Probably does. But if I did have my own business per se, I would know how to get these people on board. This is like a little practice, you know? And so we don't see how that can shape the bigger picture. We're just like, I want this and this to happen. But what if this little small thing that you're doing is the big picture, you know?
You said it better than I could have said it. Come on, that's it. All this is not for naught. Everything is absolutely happening in the perfect way that it's supposed to happen for your life, for you to step into the highest version of yourself. And I love that you're seeing it, and I love that you're letting go of the resistance of it becoming, of you becoming. And I am so honored that I get to witness it. It makes me so happy.
I feel like you raised me.
I do too. I love it. I love it. All right, we're going to end here. Renee, thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
returning and letting us witness who you are in this chapter. I love it. Your story reminds us that social workers are human, that growth isn't linear, and that we can be in the work while still learning ourselves. And it's been an honor to share this space with you. And the rest of you guys, this has been the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I'm your host, Renita Ray Davis. And as we leave this space, may you remember that the work we do lives in who we are, and who we are is allowed to keep unfolding.